raga hamvīru. This is also called hamīrukalyāNi and hamīru. It is the bhashanga janya of the 66th mela, which is Shanta kalyāNi in the Asampurna mela, Mesa kalyāNi in the Sampurna mela paddhati. This is a bhashanga deshiya raga. The bhashanga swara are Shuddha Madhyama and very rarely Kaishiki Nishada, which is a recent entry into the hamvīru raga structure. Raga hamvīru has been mentioned by Muddu Venkatamakhi in his Raga Lakshana Anubandha to Chaturdandi Prakashika. He just mentions it as a bhashanga deshiya raga under the kalyāNi mela. The full credit for introducing this raga into CM by giving it a form, a structure and a distinct identity and status goes to Muthuswami Dikshitar, who has composed Parimalaranga in the raga. Another Kriti, Purahara Nandana, is also attributed to Muthuswami Dikshitar. This Kriti, the handling of the raga in Purahara Nandana is very much like Dikshitar. However, there are some inconsistencies in the Sahitya in terms of Yati and Prasa, which make one doubt if it is actually Dikshitar. But this is beside the point and we will not go in here, as this has got nothing to do with hamīrukalyāNi. Parimalaranga is actually notated in the Sampradaya Pradarshini. In the Sampradaya Pradarshini, hamvīru is given a Sampurna Arohana and Avarohana, a Krama Sampurna Arohana and Avarohana as Murchane. But it must be mentioned here that this is a raga which can most certainly not be captured in a scale. I think it would be doing injustice to this raga by trying to fit it into a scale, as that would limit the scope and flow of the raga. The takeoff is usually as Samagabamarapada Sanidharabamapagamarusa Samagapamarapampagama. This will bring out hamīr immediately. This is another catchphrase. Rarely we can also have which is different from This phrase, is more like the Hindustani style. That is also another way of taking it off. These are all Vishesha Sanchara. The Uttaranga usually goes up as We also have we also rarely have like this. The descent is Sani Sarava or Savarava Sani Rava. In the descent, it's very usual to actually halt on the Daivata, elongate the Daivata and gently shake it in this way. Sarava Sani Rava Even the Rishabha note is usually oscillated. If you look at it, this actually is a different way of handling as compared to the parent raga, the kalyāNi. In kalyāNi we elongate the nishada, which is not at all seen in hamīrukalyāNi. If at all, it's very rare. Sani Rava Mavagamaru Parani Sani Rava Magari. This is kalyāNi. We don't have these sancharas in hamīrukalyāNi. Sani Rava Mavagamaru. In the descent from Panchama downward, we have Pagamaru, which is very common. We also have Pagaresa, Gama Pagaresa, or even more rarely, Pamagaresa, actually descending with the Pratimadhyama in place rather than the Shuddhamadhyama. Pamara Pama Pagamaru Gama Pagaresa Pamagaresa. There is gentle jaru to the Rishabha from Gandhara or the Shuddhamadhyama, which is the usual way of bringing it down in hamīrukalyāNi. It is to be noted that in hamīrukalyāNi there are no mandrasthāyi sancharas. Very rarely it touches the mandra nishada, and that is where it stops. It doesn't go anywhere below the mandra nishada, which in itself is quite rare. Let me show a few sancharas. Sasamaga pamada pama pagamara pama pagamaru Samaga pamada pagama pamagamaga pamada pama pagamaru Sasa pamari gamari samari po mari po mari pamadaya pama pagamari sapama dava sani sada pama pagamari gama pagari samaga pamadaya pamagaresa pamagare gamadaya pamagaraya pamadaya pamagaraya paganida ganida ganida Mabara Paranisa Paranisa Nidava Mabara Padama paga ma ra pa da pa ma paga ni ra sa ni ra pa ma ga pa ra sa ni ra sa ni ra sa ni ra sa ga ma ri sa ni ri sa da pa ma paga ma ra pa sa ni ri sa ga ma ri ga re sa ni sa da pa sa ni ra pa ma pa ga ma re ga re ga ma pa re ga ma pa ma re ga ma re sa ni sa. Note the way we handle the Shuddha Madhyama. Na na this very phrase immediately brings to mind hamīrukalyāNi. There is a halt on the Shuddha Madhyama, which is actually used as a nyasa at times. In this phrase, on first look, it appears as if the Pratimadhyama and Shuddha Madhyama are juxtaposed, that is, placed adjacent to each other. In Carnatic Paddhati, we do not allow the use of two Madhyamas side by side. This is a Vivadi dosha and it goes against the fundamental rules and structure of Carnatic music. But still in hamīrukalyāNi, we notice that there is a sanchara in which it appears as if the two Madhyamas have been placed right beside each other. However, it doesn't sound odd, nor does it seem to have Vivadi dosha. But when we actually look at it more carefully, it becomes clear that actually the two Madhyamas are not at all sung immediately after each other, but there is always a Sukshma Nudikara or Gamaka where we actually sing either the Panchama or the Gandhara. Just note here. Let me sing it slowly. There is always that Gandhara. Very rarely we have Panchama also coming in. It's usually this is always the way it is sung. So assuming erroneously that actually the two Madhyamas are sung side by side and actually showing that while singing would be a wrong thing to do, because we don't have again there is a Panchama there. If you sing the two Madhyamas side by side, it sounds very odd, and that is to be avoided, which is actually avoided by the Gamaka. Another thing to be noted when I mentioned about the nyasa on the Shuddha Madhyama is this is a very important catchphrase of hamīrukalyāNi, and also this clearly is a distinction between this raga and saranga. In saranga we always have a nyasa on the Pratimadhyama, not the Shuddha Madhyama. That is saranga. But in hamīru we have would immediately bring to mind saranga. Although there is Shuddha Madhyama use as well in the first half of the scale, we don't actually stop at Shuddha Madhyama but only stop on the Pratimadhyama while descending from up. Saranga. Whereas in hamīru we have Note that hamīrukalyāNi is a raga best suited to be sung in Vilambakala, which is where it shines best. Some of the kritis have been set to Madhyam Kala. They sound okay, but they don't actually bring out the full beauty of the raga. We actually notice Purahara Nandana itself being rendered by some artists in Madhyam Kala. There is a stark contrast in the feeling that we get when we listen to the kriti in Vilambakala Kala, whereas the same kriti when rendered in Madhyam Kala sounds different and not as beautiful. This is my considered opinion. And another thing to note is that actually our hamīrukalyāNi or hamvīru is more similar to the raga Keda in Hindustani music as it is sung currently, and not to the raga hamīr itself. Because in hamīr, in Hindustani, we actually have the Shuddha Madhyama while going upwards. The re ga ma ra ni sa the descent or the avarohana can be actually reconciled to our hamīrukalyāNi, but certainly not the arohana. This is very interesting and a point that may be worth studying carefully if there is any historical perspective available, as it would throw more light perhaps on how hamīr was actually sung in the Hindustani music itself about 2 centuries ago, 2.5 centuries ago, when Muthuswami Dikshitar was living, because it seems unlikely otherwise as to why Muthuswami Dikshitar or even Muddu Venkatamakki would have chosen to name this raga as hamvīru when actually it was not like hamvīru at all. The Jiva Swaras for hamīrukalyāNi, which I should have mentioned earlier, are Gandhara, the Daivata and the Rishabha. As I mentioned earlier, the Daivata and the Rishabha are actually mildly oscillated. Gandhara is often paired with Panchama, Daivata, and sometimes with Nishada as well as Dhatu Swaras. The stoppage on the Shuddha Madhyama is a characteristic phrase of hamīru, and this, when often sung, immediately brings back hamīru to one's mind and to the minds of the listener as well.